Okay, I think it's 5 o'clock. We can slowly get started while the last few attendees are joining, but I see there's already quite a good number of people, which is great. Thanks to the excellent speakers we have lined up today. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending of where you are. I think there are people from pretty much across the world. Thanks for joining this event from the RAPS UK networking group about the UKCA and I would say the present and the future of UKCA. The number of people attending this event shows that the future is still quite a big question mark, and a lot of people is interesting to hear what is going on and what is going to come in the future. So just quickly couple of things regarding housekeeping. We have all grown very used to this virtual type of event, so I'm sure everybody knows how to handle them. But if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A section. If you want to use the chat to discuss with other attendees or internally, use that. For the question, please use the Q&A tab, because it makes it a little easier than to go to the question and ask them directly to the panelist. We'll have the 3 presentations from the presenter first, and then we'll have plenty of time to go through some, or possibly as much as possible, if not all, your question in the end, at the end of the event. I anticipate the question that is always the first question that get asked during these events. The 3 presenters have agreed to share the slides at the end of the event, so we will send them out. You don't need to take too many notes. As I said, this is an event of the RAPS UK networking group. We are not a chapter yet. We are still a networking group. We are working towards becoming a chapter. We are doing several events, mostly virtual events, with a frequency roughly once a month, not all the time, but roughly once a month. We have got a few topics already lined up for the second part of the year. We are taking a little bit of a break during summer because it's very difficult to finding speakers and having time available at the same time. So we are going to start in September again with an event on the UK responsible person and the registration, and then hopefully in October we'll be able to discuss what's in the new UK regulation. Hopefully we'll have an idea before that, but in October probably we'll be able to discuss that, and then we'll try and have an event on clinical trials, and then a recap of everything towards the end of the year. As you can see, there are not exact date here because we are sort of finalizing the date, but we'll obviously let people know once the dates for these events are final. The best way of being up to date of what the RAPS UK networking group is doing is following us on the LinkedIn page. There's a link here you can do. Please, if you haven't done and you're interested, follow the page. We are publishing everything there. And if you have in mind some topics that might be of interest, or if you want to volunteer to present some topic, please get in touch with either myself or Lina Cordy, Rina Neer, or Richard Vincent, and you've got the emails here. Myself and these 3 other people that you see here are basically the planning group of the UK networking group. So just drop us an email and we can take it from there. Coming to today's event, as I said, the topic is UKCA. What is the situation now, where we are going? We have got two speakers from approved body in the UK. Well, I don't know, I see Teresa is smiling because GMED is not formally approved. We should say it's in the process of being approved, but I'm an optimist. Let's say we are presenter from two approved bodies. So we have Maddalena Pinsi from BSI, Teresa Perry from LNE-GMED UK, and then we have a speaker from industry, because we also wanted to bring a little bit the other side of the story. So we have Andrea Balogh from Ypsomed, from the Regulatory Affairs Group in Ypsomed, and well, I will moderate the event. My name, and I probably should have said it a few minutes ago. I apologize for that. I started without introducing myself, but my name is Giovanni Di Rienzo. I'm a regulatory and clinical consultant at QServe and part of this leading team of the UK RAPS UK networking group. I don't want to steal too much time from the speaker. I just got a slide here just to introduce the team, the theme. Yes, a few things have happened already as of today in terms of UK CA approval and the regulatory situation in the UK. We know a year and a half ago, Brexit basically became reality in the UK. So from 1st of January, the UK was formally outside the European Union. And if you are placing devices in the UK market, you know that you have to do already a few things throughout this year and a half. So you have to start registering yourself with MHRA, appointing a UK responsible person, making sure that that UK responsible person is registered, and started registering all your device, starting from the high-risk devices going to the low-risk device. But as of today, all devices that you're placing in the UK market should be registered. You should be registered. Your UK responsible person should be registered. And something will happen in a year from now, in July 2023, and we don't know exactly what is going to happen. We know that the CE mark will not be recognized anymore in the UK, but what is going to happen exactly is still a little bit foggy, and I hope the three presenters today will give us a little bit their look into the crystal ball or informed guess, if you want, about what is happening. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Maddalena for the first presentation.
Thank you, Giovanni. I hope you can see my presentation.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Giovanni. Today I'm going to talk about the process to UK CA marking, and in particular about BSI process to UK CA marking. And then I will show you the lessons that we learned so far. First of all, the standard disclaimer here that the information presented within this webinar is based on our current understanding of the applicable legislation and information available. I'll now briefly show you the current status and process to UK CA marking. As you know, the United Kingdom includes Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Under the terms of the Northern Ireland Protocol, from the 1st of January 2021, the rules for placing medical devices on the Northern Ireland market differ from those applicable to Great Britain. If you would like to place a device on the UK market until the end of June 2023, you have two possibilities. The first one is to follow the European legislation, so the directives or regulation, sign off the EU Declaration of Conformity and affix the CE mark. And once you have registered your devices with the MHRA, you can then place them on the Great Britain market. As you might know, this option is only valid until the end of June 2023. So as Giovanni said, from the 1st of July 2023, you can only follow this second route. The second route foresees following the UK legislation, signing off the UKCA Declaration of Conformity and affixing the UKCA mark. And then again, you have to register your devices with the MHRA before being able to place them on the GB market. So these are the two routes that you can follow until the end of June 2023, while starting from the 1st of July 2023, you can just follow the second route, the UKCA route. As per Northern Ireland, here again, there are two possible routes that can be followed. The first one is to follow the European legislation, so again, directives or regulation, sign off the EU Declaration of Conformity, affix the CE mark, register the devices with the MHRA, and finally, you can place them on the Northern Ireland market. So the difference here is that this option is going to remain valid also after the end of June 2023. So this is different compared to what we just saw for Great Britain. The second route foresees following the EU directives requirements as per the UK MDR 2002, signing off the UK NI Declaration of Conformity and affixing the CE plus UK NI mark, and then again register the devices with the MHRA. So this route requires a third-party conformity assessment that should be conducted by a UK notified body. So in this meaning, it is called notified body, UK notified body. So this body should be designated under the relevant EU legislation for the purposes of conducting conformity assessments for the Northern Ireland market only. So currently there are no UK notified body designated, and we as BSI are therefore not offering this service. We are offering access to the Northern Ireland market through the our EU notified body located in the Netherlands. So basically, in order to access the Northern Ireland market via the conformity assessment as per the EU legislation. A final note here that products carrying both the CE mark and the UK NI mark cannot be placed on the EU market, so they cannot be further circulated in the EU. In this graphic, you can see the full BSI certification process, starting with a manufacturer's inquiry and the BSI proposal. Once the proposal is signed, this constitutes the formal application and the contract starts. The next step is the application review by BSI, and following that, we will do the actual assessment. So that would be a combination of QMS audits, microbiology audits, technical documentation assessment, depending on the classification of your device. There might also be the need for consultations in case the device includes animal tissue derivatives with TSE risk, or in case of a device incorporating a medicinal substance. And we will see details about this in a later slide. Once the conformity assessments are complete, there will be a final review by someone within BSI, and then the process moves forward to the decision-making step. Once the decision has been made, if everything goes well, you would get your certificate. So this is the same process that applies under the European legislation as well. So there is nothing really new from this point of view. We will now see some scenarios that should cover the majority of your situations, depending on where you are based and with whom you are holding certifications. I will go through these quickly because you can find more details on our website if you wish. Let's start with the manufacturers holding an EU certificate that has been issued by BSI UK 0086. So certificates that BSI UK issued when it still was a EU notified body. In this case, the certificate will be converted to a UKCA certificate at the next reissue or by the end of June 2023, whichever comes first. In case of new applications for UKCA certification, so with no prior certification held by the manufacturer at all, the current MDD, IVDD, AMDD processes will be followed. But obviously, we are also going to consider the UK specific requirements where relevant. The third scenario here refers to a new application for UKCA certification based on European directives or regulation certificates that have been issued by BSI the Netherlands 2797, so our notified body. In this case, an abridged process will be conducted in order to recognize the conformity assessment already carried out by BSINL, along with the coverage for UK-specific requirements. In order to be able to conduct an abridged assessment, the proposed scope of the UKCA certificate needs to be identical to that of the EU certificate or with a reduced scope. So there shall be no changes to the devices, no new devices added to be certified under UKCA. So the scope should be identical or reduced compared to the European certificate scope. Moreover, there are some devices that are covered by the scope of the MDR, but not by the scope of the MDD. So let's think about devices with human tissue derivatives or devices with without a medical purpose. So these shall be kept in mind in case a manufacturer is requesting UKCA certification based on an MDR certification. I would also like to underline that the abridged process may not apply for UKCA certification based on IVDR certificates due to the significant differences between IVDD and IVDR. So we will need to consider such applications on a case-by-case basis. And also in this case, there are devices that are covered by the scope of IVDR, but not by the scope or IVDD, or that do not require certification under IVDD. And so these devices cannot be certified under the UK MDR 2002. So let's think about general IVD devices, such as devices that are self-declared according to Annex 3 of the IVDD, but that may require a notified body involvement under the IVDR. The last scenario in this slide refers to new applications for UKCA certification based on a European certification, so directive or regulation that has been issued by another EU notified body, so not by BSINL. In this case, we are going to follow the principles of transfer along with the coverage for UK-specific requirements. Let's now talk about combined application scenarios, starting with a combined application for a UKCA certification under the principles of MDD or AMDD with BSI UK approved body, and at the same time an application for an MDR certification with the BSINL notified body. In this case, we are going to follow the MDR certification processes, covering also the UK specific requirements. We will then deliver combined assessments, so combined QMS audits, combined microbiology audits, and combined technical documentation assessment. In case the combined application is for a UKCA certification under IVDD with the BSI UK and for an IVDR certification with BSI-NL, we are going to deliver combined QMS and microbiology audits, but we will conduct standalone technical documentation reviews under the IVDR and under the IVDD because of the significant differences between these two legislation. So basically, we try to streamline our process to make sure that wherever possible, we deliver combined assessments to avoid repeating our audits and make the process more efficient for manufacturers. Moving to devices that include animal tissue derivatives with TSC risk or that do incorporate a medicinal substance. In case of UKCA applications based on EU certificates, we are going to contact the MHRA to ask if additional consultation is required. And it's important to underline that we have to do this even if the previous consultation carried out by the manufacturer as part of the CE marking has been done with the MHRA. So this step applies to both previous consultations that have been conducted as part of the CE marking with the MHRA or with another competent authority. In case the combined initial application for UKCA and SC certification, separate consultations are required. So one consultation under the UK legislation with the MHRA and another one under the EU legislation with the appropriate EU competent authority. In case of UKCA applications of devices with animal tissue derivatives with TSC risk, a technical assessment will be conducted by the MHRA. So this is the current information that we have, but there isn't actually a clear process for consultation activities. We know the manufacturers are seeking feedback on the exact consultation requirements, timelines, and costs, so that they can plan the market access activities. And at the same time, it is also hard for us as approved body to plan our work and ensure that we do actually complete everything we need to do before the end of June 2023. Let's now move to the lessons we learned so far. This image on the left summarizes what mark will you get where. And as you can see, for example, devices with dual marking, so CE plus UKCA, are allowed to be placed onto the Great Britain market as well as on the Northern Ireland market and on the European market. So this is the option that allows you to access all the three markets, even after the 1st of July, 2023. Thinking about the two options that allows you to place a device onto the GB market until the end of June 2023, there are two different sets of labeling requirements that do apply. If you are going to place a device onto the GB market based on the CE marking, then of course you shall not affix the UKCA mark because you did not follow the UK legislation. Moreover, in case of manufacturers based outside the UK, a UK responsible person shall be appointed, but it's not mandatory to identify the Ukrp details on the labeling. On the other side, if you are planning to place a device onto the GB market based on the UKCA marking, then you must use the UKCA mark with some exceptions, such as custom-made devices or devices undergoing a clinical investigation. Under this scenario, for manufacturers that are based outside the UK Ukrp shall be identified on either the labels or the IFU. And we will go through more details about where the UKRP shall be labeled on in a later slide. In case a UK approved body has been involved in the conformity assessment, then the UK approved body number is to be included in the labeling, as you are currently doing for the EU notified body under the CE marking. One of the questions that we frequently receive is where the UK CE mark shall be placed. Bearing in mind that the same principles of the EU directives can be applied to UKCA, the UK regulations provide that a device or its derived pack bear a UKCA marking where practical and appropriate. So device or its derived pack. And the UK regulations also provide that the UKCA marking must be affixed to any sales packaging for the device and on the instruction for use. So the choice of where to affix the UKCA mark, so if on the device or on its derived pack or on both, shall be justified by the manufacturer based on the type of device. Again, the principle is similar to that of the CE marking. UK responsible person. So only one UKRP is allowed per legal manufacturer, and all manufacturers based outside the UK shall appoint a UKRP. Remember that the responsibilities of the UKRP are pretty similar to the ones of a European authorized rep. So do not confuse the role of the UKRP with the role of the PRRC, the person responsible for regulatory compliance under the MDR and IVDR. So they are both termed responsible person, but their role is really different. So the UKRP role is similar to the one of the EU rep role. Where shall the UKRP information be labeled? Well, in case of a device with the UK CE mark, the name and address of the UKRP must be included on the product labeling or on the outer packaging or on the IFU. Note that if the UK CE mark is on the device itself, it's not mandatory that the UKRP information should also be on the device, because these can be recorded on other labeling. Last note here to say that there is no symbol published yet for the UKRP, so you would need to follow the legislative requirements for non-harmonized symbols. Designated standards. When the UK left the EU, the link with the publication of the list of harmonized standards published in the EU official journal has been broken. So as a result of this, the UK has published its own list of standards that support the UK regulations, and these have been termed designated standards. 3 lists of designated standards have been published, one for the medical devices, one for the active implantable medical devices, and one for IVDs, and you can find them on the MHRA website. Since the UK regulations at this time mirror the requirements in the EU directives, the Annex Z of the harmonized European standards currently also link the requirements of the standard with the requirements of the UK regulations, unless a UK-specific national annex has been published. So you can see here an example of the EBS and ISO 1345 that does include the UK national annex NZ. So this shows the relationship between the standard and the requirements of the UK regulation. So if you are using standards to support the conformity of your devices, you should be aware of the publication of the UK list of designated standards, and you should also look out for further information on how these lists will be maintained going forward. Another item we noticed some confusion about is related to the legislative references. If you are following the UKCA conformity assessment requirements, your QMS and technical documentation, including the Declaration of Conformity, must refer to the proper UK legislative references. And in the next slide, I'll show you the comparison between some EU and UK legislative references. Also remember that you need to refer to the UK equivalent horizontal legislation, such as PPE or machinery, if they do apply to your device. One important thing to underline here is that the solutions that you decide to adopt for the design and construction of the device must conform to the safety principles, taking into account the generally acknowledged state of the art. So again, be aware of the UK designated standards as well as of the state of the art. My last slide here. As anticipated, here you can find the comparison between some EU and UK legislative references. You can see the different references in the UK legislation versus the EU legislation in relation to the marking or system and procedure packs. You can see the same reference between UK and EU in relation to devices with animal tissue with TSE risk. I'd like to draw your attention to the different references in relation to electronic IFUs. As you might know, a new regulation has been published in the EU, the regulation 2021-22-26, but the previous European regulation, the 207-2012, applies to UK, since that's the one that has been transposed into the UK law at that time. So that's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maddalena. That was really useful. There are already lots of questions in the chat, in the Q&A, actually. Just let me say again, please put your question in the Q&A tab rather in the chat, because it makes it much easier to sort of pick them up later. There is just one question that is very BSI specific that maybe Maddalena I'll ask now, and it's there was a question about if BSI has published any guidance or any white paper that can be downloaded.
No, we didn't publish a white paper or a guidance, but we do have quite a number of webinars on our website. So basically, you can access them for free. You can see the recording and you can download the presentations, so the slides. So you can find details there. Perfect.
Thank you very much. Then now let's move from BSI to LNE-GMED. So from a very large, already approved body to a medium to large a body that it's in the process of being approved. So we've got Teresa Perry, which is the Quality and Accreditation Director at LNE-GMED UK. And Teresa, I just hand it over to you to give us the LNE-GMED perspective.
No problem. Thanks for that, Giovanni. So as everybody's, as Giovanni said, I am at LNE-GMED UK, having previously spent 20 years at BSI, so I know Maddalena very well. And my role is focused on building the quality management system for the UK subsidiary of LNE and GMED to achieve that designation for UK AB status. So I thought Giovanni thought it might be interesting to hear from the perspective of a smaller, well, not quite approved body, as he said, and we'll talk about the journey towards designation and give you some thoughts and perspective on the challenges that we've experienced along the way. And I'll finish up by sort of sharing some thoughts on how we'll be approaching the certification process once we're approved. So just to give you a little bit of a top level overview of what LNE-GMED looks like. So LNE is the parent organisation and has a direct report into French government. This organisation is a notified body and holds ISO 17065 accreditation for a number of industrial schemes aimed at CE marking. So this would be non-medical products, anything from petrol pumps to chimney flues. GMED SAS is also a notified body and a subsidiary of LNE, specialising in the medical device conformity procedures. The SAS acronym indicates a status similar to a limited liability company, and that makes it much more autonomous from French government. GMED also has a branch in North America and has recently opened the UK branch in October of last year. The UK branch has a fairly unique position in part of the overall organisation because it intends to provide a certification route for both medical and non-medical products, and will therefore hold 17021 and 17065 accreditation. So if we look at our journey to designation, the LNE group didn't have any presence in the UK, so it was really been a complete startup for us. Setting up in the UK has probably taken a bit longer than we expected, and currently we're in a recruitment phase. We submitted our UKAS application in December last year and had a positive pre-assessment in April, and we're looking to start our initial assessment actually next week. But due to our large scope, the audit is going to be spread over 2 months. So that's taking a little bit longer than we anticipated. Once we have a ISO 17021 positive recommendation, we can then have our MHRA initial audit with a goal to be designated before the end of the year. Okay. So there have been a number of challenges along the way. I mentioned being a complete startup in the UK with no previous presence. And actually, even setting up a bank account hasn't been a very simple process. Quite limited recognition of an industry where you have a long regulatory approval process before you can generate revenue. GMED themselves will admit this project was probably not started as soon as they would have liked. I think we're all aware of the huge commitment of resource that was needed for MDR and IVDR set up, and then supporting the early renewals of directive certificates, and that's absorbed a huge amount of capacity. My personal challenge, the QMS that I'm setting up has to incorporate linkages to both the GMED and LNE systems and work for both sets of products and regulatory requirements, which is a bit of a challenge. In addition, the original systems were quite French-centric, so that's where the notified body sits. So we've had to set up lots of additional processes for the level of autonomy that will be needed. I think you're probably aware there are key decisions and processes which need to sit within the approved body, such as the application review and certificate decision making. But we need a process that's simple and efficient and can be run by a very small team. From an external perspective, there are several more challenges. I think we're probably all aware of the deadlines coming up, but LNE-GMED UK have the added pressure of the non-medical deadline being 6 months earlier, at the end of December this year. UKAS capacity is under a lot of pressure. Existing regulatory commitments to maintain their already huge programme and then have all these new accreditations coming on board. I think this is one of the reasons that our audit is probably spread over a couple of months. In addition to that, we are required to have a witnessed audit in each of the 7 MD9 technical areas. Now, GMED don't have very many UK clients at the moment, so we're somewhat at the mercy of COFRAC, the French accreditation board, in order to support the cross-border accreditation programme. So I'm going to be a little bit cheeky here. This is an area that some of you on the audience here might be able to help us with. So if we can't get enough coverage from COFRAC quickly enough, one of the things that we may consider is offering an audit service against ISO 13485 for non-clients with UKAS observing as a way of being able to achieve that witnessed audit programme. So if that is something that you might be interested in, please drop me a line. There'll be an email address at the end of the presentation, and we'll contact you if we end up having to take this route. I think we'd be especially keen to hear from some of those manufacturers who might cover some of the more niche or high risk products, high risk IVDs, animal tissue, nanoparticles, active implantables, that sort of thing. Now, MHRA are suffering from a similar impact on their resource, and they're undergoing intense reorganisation as well, which is probably the worst imaginable time, really. Recruitment is an ongoing challenge for everybody, really. Regulators and manufacturers all trying to recruit from the same pool against that pre-COVID background of an increased reluctance to travel and work away from home. So LNE-GMED UK are in constant communication with the MHRA about what our processes should look like under the UK MDR. But you know, I've got to be a little bit careful here. We aren't designated, and obviously we may get feedback that our processes need to change. But you know, barring any changes to the guidance, our current approach will probably look similar to a certification transfer wherever possible. So some of the main scenarios that we envisage are an existing GMED CE client who wants UKCA. And in this instance, we'll aim to leverage as much of the client data as possible from existing CE audits and file reviews. And as long as we've visited the site before, we're going to aim to try and keep that assessment remote and just focusing on the differences. Another scenario that we're planning for is the client coming from another notified body and wants to transfer their CE and have a UKCA certificate. And again, we'll use our transfer process and focus on the UKCA differences. We're also anticipating clients coming from another notified body, wanting to keep their CE with that notified body, but just wanting the UKCA only. And that's an option that we will be offering. You're obviously not going to get the same level of cost savings there because we will have to treat you as an initial assessment with an ongoing surveillance programme, and they will have to cover the full UK MDR requirements. But we would anticipate being able to offer a reduction in the durations because of that existing quality management system process. So what of the future? The UK MDR legislation was supposed to be heard in Parliament this month, so hopefully we will soon have sight of what the future will look like, but there is no news yet. I think we've been told by the MHRA that news is imminent, but we don't actually have a date yet. The MHRA plan to set up several focus groups to help guide and create the guidance that will steer manufacturers through the conformity route as the legislation changes, including transition requirements. But those task forces, focus groups haven't yet started because the legislation is not published. If I had to guess at what we think the legislation might look like, I think it would be a bit of a no-brainer to say that there's going to be a lot of similarities with MDR and IVDR. My personal wish is that there is a little dash of pragmatism added in, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. As soon as LNE-GMED UK is designated, we will be accepting new clients, but I'm sure you can probably appreciate we do have to support our existing clients and give them priority. But yeah, there should be some capacity to take on new clients as well. So you can see the email address at the bottom of the slides. If you have any queries or you want to take part in a potential audit programme to help us with the witnessed audit challenge, then please drop us a line and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. So just a point to remember, we cannot start on any formal designation processes, not even a quote, until we are officially designated with MHRA. So all we can give you is information at this point. Okay, that's me finished. So thank you, Giovanni.
Thank you, Teresa. As for Maddalena, I would leave the question for later, but there is a quick one that is, again, very specific for GMED that we can do now, which is somebody from the audience was asking if you already know what the approved body number for GMED will be.
No, great.
Not yet.
No,
Okay.
nothing at all.
Okay. That was an easy one to start. We keep the difficult one for later.
They don't give away secrets like that without a fight.
Okay, perfect. So we had the two perspectives from the approved bodies. Now let's try and see a little bit the other side. We saw the process, how all should run smoothly, and now Andrea probably will show us where the problem is and where the showstopper potentially could be. So Andrea Balogh, as I said, she works from Ypsomed in Switzerland. She works in the regulatory team. She's involved in the UKCA process for Ypsomed, so she can give us a good insight on the industry perspective. I leave the floor to you, Andrea.
Okay, thank you so much for the word. So I'm Andrea Balogh, and I'm going to share my presentation. Please let me know if you can see it.
Yes.
So
not
normally,
yet in
okay,
presentation
not yet in
mode.
full. Oh yes,
Yeah.
and
Now it
should
is.
be. Yes. So
Yeah.
okay, I'm going to switch off my camera for a better one. So thank you. I will talk about the UKC marking, how we handle it at Ypsomed AG, which is a Swiss-based manufacturer of insulin pumps and related accessories such reservoir, infusion sets, and so on. So I will talk a little bit about the challenges from our side, what we faced with the UKCA marking and what is still ahead of us. Okay, I'm not sure it's going. So the agenda is, it's about a little bit about the history and the transfer to the UK MDR, which we heard already from previously. The strategy, the considerations for the UKCA marking, also the analysis and focus and process, what we are handling. Also about the product specific requirements, the UKC declaration of conformity, what we made, and the experiences and challenges, and of course the next steps, what we are planning to do. So yes, the first is the history. As we all know, I will be really quick with this. So we had the Brexit on the 31st of January 2020, and as of the 1st of January 2021, we have the new EU-UK Trade and Cooperation Agreement, which led to the UK Medical Device Regulation, UK MDR 2002, and for the UKCA marking. Here, this is the transfer for the UK MDR. So we need to have our products under the UKCA mark till 1st of July 2023. So that's our deadline. I will talk about it later, what are our expectations as a company and as a manufacturer. And of course, for this UK conformity assessment, we need a UK responsible person as well, what we have in the UK, and what we know that all the requirements for the UKC marking must be fulfilled. So that is not really a question. I don't think, no, not from any side. So we created a strategy and we have a transfer plan for all of our products. So what we did is we made a gap analysis, what we currently have and what we would like to submit and what we need to submit. Also, what are the ongoing UKCA procedures? Also, we prioritized our transfer and our products. We also set up the responsibilities, the timelines, and in our list, we also included the status and the completeness of the submissions, which is really not filled in yet, but hopefully it will be a successful submission at the end. So here you can see the product. We also listed what are the class of the device. Mainly we are working with class 2A and 2B medical devices. The topic, of course, is the UKC marking. So the UK transfer, we also set up the responsibilities, the submission, the review time, and the expected approval date, which is still unfortunately unknown. But we hope we will have, in a short period, we will know about it. So considerations for the UKCA marking. Of course, there is the UK MDR 2002 as amended, and also what it includes and what we needed to consider is that we maintain the essential requirement checklist, and known as GSPRs under MDR. We had to assess the UK designated standards or justification for the alternatives. And also we had to consider to set up the declaration of conformities for the UKCA marking, referencing UK legislation compliance. We also addressed the applicable regulatory requirements within the QMS. And yeah, of course, which is, I think, every company and every manufacturer will face the tech file and the technical documentation to include the UK MDR regulatory details in them, and also to set up the labels and the IFU to meet the UK requirements, and to include, for instance, the UKCA marking on your product labeling, which can be kind of challenging, but I will talk about that later. So the analysis, what we made some investigations on the requirements, so product-specific requirements, and also the requirements for the UK Declaration of Conformity. And also we investigated what is the status of our current documentation. So the technical documentation under MDD and MDR, the conformity of the norms, and also the labeling requirements, what we have and what we need to meet to get the UKCA mark for our device. And here is our focus and process. So we have a candidate approved body, which is now currently under the pilot Abridged assessment for designation. This is still an ongoing accreditation process. And under this process, we were lucky that we could include 2 of our products to be submitted for the UKCA marking. Our products are all CE marked products, so either if it's under MDD or under MDR, but we all have, and we hold the CE certificate, and our UKCE certification is based on the existing CE assessments. So now what we did for this pilot Abridged assessment and also for the submission, we collected a really big bunch of lists from our products, including the article number, device description, GMDN codes, medical and technology codes, classification, and everything about the device. Also, in this list, we included the sterilization specifications, like the sterilization method, the facilities, also the packaging specification of our sterile products. We included the critical suppliers, and these lists are really detailed. So for the critical suppliers, it's not just about the supplier certificates, but we had to include also the company name, the address, the contact details, everything. And of course, we listed the sterilization and packaging facilities, as well as the manufacturing facilities. So this was one big file, what we had to do for the submission for this pilot assessment, and the other package was the UKCA Declaration of Conformities. We did this Declaration of Conformities based on our existing MDR Declaration of Conformities. So basically for us, it looks very, very similar. So we included the manufacturer, the UK responsible person, the product name and type, statement of compliance to the UK MDR 2002, the intended purpose, the risk classification, the UK legislation and designated standards, applied references, of course, the conformity assessment route, the UK approved body, the UK certificate number and date of issue, and the signatures, which of course this last two is still open because we did not get yet the UK certificate, so we did not sign our declaration of conformities. These are still in draft version under review, but yeah, these are all included on our DOCs. What we still included, but it's not required yet, is the basic UDIDI. So according to my latest knowledge, it's only recommended, but it's not yet required. And yeah, we don't know if it will come, but most probably the basic UDIDI will be also a requirement later on. That's what we expect. And yeah, what is not a UK requirement is the SRN authorized representative. So we really left out that information from our declaration of conformities. Here's some experiences and challenges. So I already listed you what we had to collect and how our declaration of conformities looks like. So this is, we had to prepare this document listing and the product specific requirements. Also, we prepared the draft declaration of conformities for the UKCA marking. This was kind of time consuming. I would not say it's difficult because you know your products, you know your processes, you know where your products are sterilized and so on, who are your suppliers. But it's really time consuming. So we really had to take our time, and it's not one day or 1 week, but it was really a longer period to collect all the information and to prepare everything. We did not submit yet our whole tech file, but I assume it will come later once our candidate notified body is approved in the UK. And of course, once we submitted all these documents, we had to also respond on questions, let's call them deficiencies. So we had to update more times our listing, we had to update our UKCA declaration of conformities, especially regarding the standards what we used. So I would say it's a long accreditation process, including this submission. But after that, once the notified body is accredited, we expect a shorter submission process for the products. And yeah, we hope that. Of course, parallel, we can do and we can start some preparation and some documentation processes. And here, I think in these next steps comes also a little bit more challenging phase. So first of all, you need to have the conformity assessment for the UKCA marking. Then, of course, you have to maintain your technical documentation, which is either under MDD or under MDR. You need to be compliant with the norms, including the UK MDR standards. Also, what is in our case, since we are a Swiss-based manufacturer, we have some MDD documents which are still in German. So this means for us, we need to translate them in English for the UK, and that's what we can do before start the whole submission process. We can already start reviewing our documentation. We can start, if there is any German version, then we can start translating them in English. And the other challenge is what I see is the UKCA labeling requirements to implement on our product labeling and on the IFU. You need to change your IFU. That means you need to change many other documents to be compliant and to have a correct and a proper verification for your documents and also for your product. And of course, in a way, the product labeling for the UKCA mark is challenging because we have different size of products and different size of labeling. So, and the UKCA mark has also the requirements, how it should look like, how big it should be. It should be still readable. And if you have a small product labeling, then it gives you a challenge how you can include it, where you can put it. Do you really need to put it on your product, or is it good on the secondary label as well? So it's all the requirements what you really need to know, and you really need to consider before you start preparing your new labeling and your new IFU for this whole bunch of submission. And of course, it becomes then the labeling specification you need to update and maintain also all the transport verification what you need to update and maintain. And I could still list a lot of documents. So I think it will be challenging for all of us. But yeah, I really expect, and I'm really confident that if it goes well, then we can have our products UKCA marked like June 2023, if not all of them, but at least what we really want to sell in the UK, we can do that. So I think it's really possible. Okay, thank you. So that was from my side. And if you have any questions, please let us know.
Thank you, Andrea. That was really useful. I would start with a question for you as well, and then we open the Q&A, because I saw in the Q&A tab there was a bit of surprise when you were mentioning that your candidate approved body, which by the way now I found the right wording, is not almost approved, as I was saying, but candidate approved, if they are already reviewing despite not being already approved. So there was a question about that, if they are actually already doing something.
Yeah, actually they are. So we listed all the product details and product specific requirements what we for the products which we wanted to include in this pilot abridged assessment. And now they are reviewing the list and also our declaration of conformities, the draft versions. They are not reviewing our tag file yet. So that's the difference. So they are just reviewing what we want to submit, how we want to submit, what are the products, and how our draft DOCs looks like, but not the tag file yet. So that's not yet included yet.
Yeah, that's clear. Yeah, because I've heard there are some of the candidate approved body that are doing some pilot project, and they are reviewing something. I'm not sure to what extent. Maybe Teresa, I ask you if GMED is doing some pilot project or if it's planning to do some pilot project.
When we had that sort of tentative discussion with the MHRA, they were pretty clear that we were not to do any designation type activities beforehand. So I think we would probably not be planning to do that at the moment until we were on a sort of slightly surer ground.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So there are lots of questions. So bear with me if I need to go through of them a little bit, if I misread something. But I think probably the question I would start from is the elephant in the room, or not really the elephant in the room, because Teresa actually touched a little bit on that. And is if any of you has got any idea of what is coming out in the new regulation, but probably even more than what it's inside the new regulation, what is going to be the timeline? Because we are now, it's 12 months from 1st of July, and there are rumors of, I don't know if we want to call them delays or transition period or something like that.
We're all praying for it, aren't we? I think we've all got our fingers crossed, but you can't plan for that at all. So you have to plan for the June, end of June. And yeah, no, I mean, we've been told by the MHRA imminently, and that's as much as they're prepared to give out. Sorry, can't be more precise than that.
No, sure. I know I'm asking to look into the crystal ball, but you know, I wouldn't do my job today if I wasn't asking that question. Maddalena, same answer.
Yeah, exactly. So we don't know anything more that you do.
Okay, that's a shame. We tried it. So let's look at some of the questions that are here in the Q&A. Okay, do you have an estimate of the timelines involved in the transfer approach with both GMED and with BSI?
This does really depend upon the kind of device that you do have, depends upon the team. So this is something that you might obtain information about if you contact us. I mean, this is something I cannot really answer you about.
Yes, it's a tough one to answer, isn't it? And because we haven't actually piloted it, we don't know for sure. I guess at least BSI, you've had a chance to do some of these, but you know, we're obviously, if you're already with GMED and we've got good visibility of both files and there's good compliance, then it's going to be quicker than obviously if you come from outside and you know, we've got to do things from scratch. So we would hope it wouldn't be too long, but yeah, we're going to be all very new at this. So, you know, the first few applications are probably going to take a bit longer and we will speed up as we get more experienced in the process.
Yeah, and then there is a question about expiry dates of UK certificates. So when you issue a UK CA certificate linked to the MDD certificate, is the expiry date linked to that, so it mirrors exactly that?
So the UKC expiry date would be the set as 5 years from the last renewal of the MDD or the MDD certificate, or from its first issue, depending on that. So, but this is our current policy, but obviously it depends upon the new legislation. So maybe the expiry dates may be cut short. So we are now putting our 5 years, but this might change.
Okay, so at the moment you're issuing certificates that have expiry date even beyond May 2024. Yeah,
of course, because the May 2024 date does not apply to UK.
Okay, and if you issue a new UKCA certificate,
5 years,
not linked to anything, 5 years.
5 years for us as well.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
And again, really depending on how the new legislation will look like. So if this certificate will be allowed to remain valid for all those 5 years, of course.
Then there is a more, let's say, philosophical question asking why the UK, the MHRA is still following the directives, while the rest of Europe is moving towards something more stringent, like the regulations.
Do you think that might be a lessons learned? If you look at the challenges, you know, especially with IBDR and reference laboratories and things like that, which I'm not sure have been completely resolved yet, then I think the MHRA would look inward and say, we can see that we're not ready, and we've got to get our own infrastructure in place before we start implementing something that's stricter. So I think it's just a common sense approach, really. That would be my guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because it was already transposed into the UK legislation, being directives, right? So it was already there.
It was just pragmatic, temporary pragmatism. Okay. Then a specific question on the technical documentation for the three of you. I've seen from Andrea the type of contents that Ypsomed is using to sort of bridge the gap between the MDD or the MDR and the UKCA. Have you considered, for Andrea and for Maddalena and Teresa, are you expecting something that discuss the applicability of the clinical evaluation to UK population, to the state of the art in the UK, like some general statement? And I'm asking the question because I've seen some statement in this direction from some of the candidate approved bodies out there, without naming specific names.
I guess, I mean, I'm no clinician, so I can't talk about this in any sort of knowledge, but we're looking at the directive approach. So whatever you would have done for the directives, you would do for UKCA. So that's kind of, I would frame all of your questions with that sort of framework around it. What would I have done if I was just applying under the directive, and then do the same approach? So that's about as much help as I can give you on that.
So not specifically, you wouldn't expect specifically something saying that the state of the art is the same, and
I can't see why.
Andrea, is it something you have talked about it at all, or?
No, not yet. To be honest, not yet. I don't I expect a little bit similar what we had, for instance, for MDR transfers. So I could expect something like that, but I'm not pretty sure. We did not really receive any questions yet, so related details in the technical documentation.
Okay, thank you. Then we start going in towards the labeling sort of question, which are a very hot topic for industry. This is not really labeling, it's direct marking, which is also a little bit more complex. So the question is, if you expect for a device that have a direct mark of the CE mark to see also on the device itself the UKCA mark, because obviously there are some challenges in terms of space when you do direct marking.
So again, as Teresa was mentioning, the same principles of the directive do apply, right? So this is valid for direct marking too. What used to be a requirement under the EU directive is the requirement under the UK legislation.
Yeah, the directive though say something, now I'm quoting by heart, if practicable or something along those lines. So if you have a CE mark already there and that takes all your space, you might argue that it's not practicable, but I don't know how.
But at the end of the day, you've got a justification for it, haven't you? Yeah. Whether or not it flies.
Okay, so I would say the door, you're not closing completely the door, at least you leave us some hope.
And I think the challenge is that the MHRA have categorically said they're not going to be issuing any guidance until the new regulation comes out. So at that point, we can hopefully expect a lot more guidance on these sorts of questions.
Do you expect guidance sort of roughly at the same time of the regulation, or from that moment they will start thinking about it?
Well, yeah, if they haven't had a great deal of sight of it, I mean, I don't know to what level, you know, they will have been preparing in advance. So, you know, resource is not, I think, that free in the MHRA at the moment. So I think they'll be struggling to release it at the same day. But yeah, it'll be a program of release, I suspect, just like the med devs were.
Yeah. Then, well, another, I think, quite common question about designated standards versus harmonized standard. What is your approach in that respect, knowing that some of the designated standard are older version? So are you expecting to track the older version and do a sort of retrospective gap analysis, or there will be some lenience and the compliance with the state-of-the-art standard will be considered good enough?
Well, if you think the directives are based on state-of-the-art, aren't they? So I think if you can argue that something is state-of-the-art, you're going to take a fairly pragmatic approach to that.
Okay. Nice and easy. Same from BSI. I see,
yeah,
Maddalena,
exactly.
you're nodding. Oh, okay.
Exactly.
That's a relief. Okay, let me scroll to some of the questions. Oh, what is the current requirement for UDI in the UK?
No requirement.
Nothing.
Yeah. So it does not apply currently under the current UK legislation.
Oh, then we have another question about the transfer type of approach. So the question is, if you've got an application using that transfer type of approach, is there a transition period for the labeling, like there would be a transition period if you transfer CE mark to CE mark?
It's a tough one, isn't it? Because, I mean, under the directive, there was always a transition period, but we're talking here about two completely different pieces of statutory instruments. So I would say no, because it would be misleading. You know, we may get corrected by that by the MHRA, but, you know, it's a completely different legislation. So I'm guessing no would be my best bet.
If you will ever transfer a UKCA certificate from an approved body to another, then that's fine, that's applicable. But otherwise, as Teresa mentioned, we can't see why.
Okay, thanks. Okay, then there is another question about timing of the Abridged process, but we know you can't, well, you probably don't, yes. Well, either don't know, or you can't really estimate exactly. That's an interesting one. Would you recommend adding references to the UK MDR 2002 to an existing technical documentation, or maintaining a completely separate technical file, technical documentation for UK?
Wow, I wouldn't make life hard for myself personally. That's just my approach. Keep it simple. It's always mine.
So yeah, it's really up to the manufacturer to decide how they would like to address this. So it could be a separate technical documentation, or could be just a combined technical documentation covering both the requirements. But of course, if it is just one technical documentation, it should be clear, organized. I mean, it should be clear the parts that are applicable to the EU legislation and the ones that are applicable to the UK legislation.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Maddalena, because you are going to get differences in classification.
Exactly.
And other differences. So pointing out where they diverge is important.
Andrea, what's Ypsomed approach on that, if you can say.
Yeah, so in our first plan is to combine, but yeah, of course we need to see how it looks like when we combine, because it can also cause us difficulties how we maintain in the future, because whenever there is a change in the labeling or in the legislation or wherever, you still need to update, but then not only for instance for MDR, but then you need to maintain also for the UK. So it's a little bit like, yeah, I think it will be a challenge. How I think we will just start with one document and then we will see which is easier for us, how we can maintain it better in the future.
Yeah, so it's not an
not
obvious,
completely clear. No, not an obvious one. No, not yet.
Yeah. Okay. Let me see. To any of the notified body, do you have application forms that you can share? I suppose not for GMED yet. PSI, I guess, must have something.
Yeah, exactly. We do have. So there is a web page where you can basically complete a form, and then by completing the form, one of the person in BSI will contact you to talk about your application.
Okay, there was a question about Northern Ireland, which is typically particularly cumbersome, at least for me. So I wanted to, okay, yeah, for Northern Ireland, if we follow the EU process, the CE mark, and we are already registered and have a UK responsible person for UK, do we need to do an additional notification to be able to sell in Northern Ireland, or does the MHRA registration for UK be enough?
So you've registered with the MHRA, you've got a UKRP, and you're following the CE mark requirements like that. That sounds like you're following the right route to me. I can't see that you've been, yeah.
Okay, yeah, the Northern Ireland, it's always extra, extra complex. Yeah. Okay, if a manufacturer apply for UKCA, let's say starting from an MDR certificate, and the classification between MDR and, let's call it MDD or the UK process, is different. For example, under MDD was 2A, under MDR is class 3. What will be the conformity assessment?
Well, from UKCA perspective, we will assess you against the criteria for the classification that it is under the old directives. So, even if you've got an MDR technical file or dossier that meets class 3 requirements, it's not going to have anything missing if the product is 2A under the directives. So just because you've chosen to do more shouldn't be a problem. So I can't see that would be an issue, as long as you clearly point out in your technical documentation that under this legislation is a different classification. So you just need to signpost your technical documentation appropriately.
Yeah, I agree. Yes, our assessment will be based on the classification as per the UK legislation. And generally the MDR requirements are stricter. And if there is a change in the classification, it's higher in the MDR, right? And so, yeah, we are going to leverage, we are going to follow the classification as per the UK.
Then there is a question specific for you, Teresa, about GMED. They said if GMED is not going to be designated till Q4 and we need to have our certificate by July next year, what should we do, basically?
Well, they can't say out
and they are already GMED clients. Sorry, yeah. I forgot this important bit.
Yeah, I mean, it is obviously you will get priority. GMED clients will have priority. But I guess we can only go as fast as the system allows us to. And we are very much beholden on sort of the issues that I talked about earlier. So we're trying to do it as quickly as we can. But yeah, I think we're all praying that the deadline gets pushed out, but you just can't bank on it. So, you know, we totally understand if manufacturers make applications elsewhere, because, you know, I think it's a consideration that we'd all be making in your shoes. So you've got to do what you think is best for you as an organisation. But I think the issue is that there's just very limited capacity. So yeah,
and the option out there are not that much.
Exactly.
Yes, BSI, it's in an excellent position, but even BSI capacity is not unlimited.
Yeah.
So there's another sort of generic question, is if you have any tips for doing a submission in parallel, MDR and UKCA, if there's something that manufacturers should keep in mind to make the process as smooth as possible.
So as we were saying, if we need to assess the technical documentation, it should be clear, right? The parts that are applicable to the MDR or the parts that are applicable to UKCA. So if the technical documentation is fine, the process goes smoothly.
Yeah, so nothing specific that you would suggest. Then I suppose, quick question. Is there a specific template for the UKCA Declaration of Conformity?
No, I think MHRA have said they're not going to issue any guidance until after the new legislation. So potentially there will be in the future, but not at the moment. But I quite like, you know, Andrea's template that she was using. I think that was a good piece of guidance in terms of what should be on there. Again, you know, you just got to go back to that. What did we do under the directives? And then just change out the legislation to make sure it's appropriate to the UK. And I guess a key point, it was in Andrea's presentation, but that the UK will be using GMDN codes. So I don't think there's any specific requirement to have those on the Declaration of Conformity, but, you know, certainly within your technical documentation, it's just to be aware that the EU and codes won't be accepted.
And probably, since in the MDR Declaration of Conformity, you need to put the EMDN codes, maybe to make things as similar as possible, probably makes sense.
Yeah.
And the second quick question is, if you know if there will be let's call it harmonized symbol for UK responsible person.
Maybe. I mean, I don't have any further information about that for now, so it might be in the future, but I can't tell.
There's nothing at the moment, no.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So at the moment, as far as I know, everybody is using something similar to the Ukrp symbol with Ukrp.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we've got time for an additional question, final question. Any thoughts on UKMED applicability for the UKCA? For UKCA, I would say probably not UKMED, but maybe something similar. Should we expect something similar in the UK?
Who knows? I mean, obviously the UK have got their own registration database for registering manufacturers. So I guess there's potential for an extension of that in the future. But given how long UKMED's taken to get working, I wouldn't hold your breath.
Okay, perfect. I think we have unfortunately finished our time. We haven't finished the questions. There are still lots there, and I apologize to the people who raised the question and we didn't manage to answer. But I think there was already a lot of information, a lot of responses. So Thank you very much, Andrea. Thank you, Maddalena. Thank you, Teresa. I'm sure you'll get further questions directed to you directly after this session. And well, hopefully in a few weeks, we'll be able to have a bit more clarity for what is coming next year.
Would be great.
Yeah.
Thank you for inviting us,
Yeah.
Giovanni.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much, everybody, for attending.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Thank you. Bye.